This is the Lulich Corner, and today we get to sit down with one of our own personal injury attorneys, Elle Nichols. Elle, thanks so much for coming on, for taking your time, and for sharing your wealth of knowledge about personal injury. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Jordan. I'm excited to be here, and I hope I can answer some of your questions that are just burning on your minds or help you in the future should you ever encounter an accident. I hope you don't, but if you do, or if someone you love does, the answers to the questions we're going to talk about today are really going to help you out.
I'm really excited because these are top questions that people search when they're thinking about car accidents, personal injury cases. And so we're just going to do a deep dive in these questions. I don't think most people live their lives thinking that they're going to go about getting into an accident today, right? Let's be real. I don't think that happens.
They're unpredictable, and they apply to everyone.
They apply to everyone. So what do you think about trying to minimize your likelihood of getting into an accident? Like how can people proactively prepare for getting into an accident, and what steps can they do to try to minimize that likelihood?
That's a really great question, especially in light that accidents are so unpredictable. How do you prepare when something is so unpredictable? Well, the best way is to just count on, if it ever happens, you're ready for it. And the best way to do that is a little known way that nobody talks about. And that is to have uninsured motorist coverage on your insurance policy. I can't tell you how many calls we get from people that are in an accident and they're worried and they're at the scene, and thank God they're not catastrophically injured most of the time. And they're calling in, or a family member is, and when we ask them, well, what kind of coverage there is, and they say, oh, we have full coverage, don't worry about it. And then we find out, no, they don't have full coverage. What they have is the state minimum, which is $10,000 worth of property damage liability and $10,000 worth of PIP coverage. So neither of those cover you if you're hurt in an auto accident. It covers your medical bills, but it's not going to cover any kind of liability if you cause an accident. And so this is really important. And what that means is vice versa. If you get in an accident, there's a chance that the person that hit you that's at fault is not going to have any coverage that applies to your injuries. So if all you have is full coverage, which is not full coverage, which is the bare minimum, then you've got about $10,000 worth of coverage to get you through medical bills. It's not.
That's not much. And I think all of us have probably gone online, have filled out some type of insurance application. And so I think you're hitting the point, because there's some things you can waive and there's some things you can't waive, right? And so if you're trying to optimize, if you've ever been on there and you're looking at the coverages, and if you're just trying to extract everything you possibly can just to get down to the bare bones coverage, that's not going to give you insurance that you're talking about.
No. And then when you get in an accident, you or your loved ones may find out that there's no coverage other than that $10,000. But guess what? It seems like that's a lot of money, but the hospitals know that they have first dibs on that $10,000. There's a statute that says they have the first right to the first $5,000 of that. So what they do is, a lot of times, first thing they do is run a certain test or something, and those tests just happen to cost about $9,300 to $9,700. So there goes your PIP. Now what happens with all the extra care that you're going to need? That's why you've got to have uninsured motorist. It's called uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage. It comes in two types. You can either get stacked or unstacked. You always want to elect stacked, even if you have one vehicle.
So I think you just touched on a good point. You talked about after an accident, sometimes what some medical providers do. So once someone's involved in an accident, what should they do? Like what steps do they take in order to protect themselves?
Well, first of all, hopefully if they're not catastrophically injured and they're able to, they need to call law enforcement, because law enforcement needs to come out, document, and do an investigation. Obviously, an ambulance is going to need to be called. They should not be worrying about a lot of the things that they would typically worry about, like, getting over to the vet to pick up their dog on time, or whatever it is that's on their mind. When they're in an accident, they're in shock, and a lot of times they don't even realize it. It's not the time to make important life decisions. It's the time to just take care of themselves. And right then, the best way they can do it is to get immediate medical care and to call law enforcement.
So once they contact law enforcement, I mean, some people, I think a lot of people, they're nervous, they're anxious, they've got their adrenaline rushing, right? And so I think a lot of people, maybe if their injuries are questionable, their first thought is, I'm fine. I'm fine. I don't, I'm good. I don't need to go get help. But what would you tell those people that are maybe contemplating or deciding right there at the scene of the accident that they don't need to go to a doctor, that they don't need to go get medical attention help? What would your advice be to those people?
We have this happen all the time, actually, because what happens at the scene of an accident is that a person is flooded with fight or flight hormones and they're in a state of shock. So what that does is mask pain. So that's going on. It's masking pain. They're not thinking clearly, and they're just looking for visible injuries, right? They're looking for bones sticking out, blood sticking out, obvious injuries. But our bodies are made mostly of water. And so if you've ever seen the show Mythbusters, I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole, but they show what happens when you have force go through a matter that has a similar consistency to the human body. And you can just see how that matter breaks up and how it can be damaged. And it's very useful because soft tissue injuries are extremely common in auto accidents, but they're often not perceived until days after, because once those fight or flight hormones leave the body, now the people are left with the pain and the swelling and they can finally realize it. But if they delayed treatment, sometimes they think, oh, well, why should I go now? That's why you need to go right away.
In Florida, is there any deadline or any dates that they need to be aware of in terms of thinking about when they're going to go seek that first medical attention or be first seen by a doctor?
Yes, so I'm glad you brought that up because earlier we discussed PIP insurance, which every Floridian has. PIP applies to you if you get in an accident, it doesn't matter who's at fault, and it's that first $10,000 worth of coverage. But in order to have your access to the full $10,000 benefit, you have to be declared to have an emergency medical condition within 14 days of the accident. So you need to go and get treatment right away. Go to the emergency room or go to an urgent care, and one of those is better than the other, depending on the level of your injuries.
So that's great. So 14 days, if you're not seen by a medical provider and declared that injury within 14 days,
Sure.
then the amount that you have available for medical bills and expenses, it goes down, right? It's no longer the $10,000, it's less.
It's like $2,500, which is a
Wow.
lot less.
Wow. And so all you have to do in order to maximize that coverage is just be seen by a medical provider.
Yeah, just check that box. Take yourself to urgent care. Go get checked out.
I think that's definitely one common mistake that people might make is they wait a little bit too long to seek that medical attention, and then they're not getting that full amount for their PIP coverage. When you think about an accident and when you think about other common mistakes that people make, is there anything else that comes to mind for you?
Yes, absolutely. And that would be talking to the insurance adjusters. They are trained, even your own insurance adjusters, your own insurance company, right? Because they will call you, and the insurance companies have only one goal, and it is to either delay or deny a claim. They just don't want to pay. Find some way not to pay. That is always at the forefront of their minds.
Or pay as little as possible.
Exactly.
If they're going to pay.
Exactly. And so one of the ways that they justify doing that is by taking recorded client statements. And whether you know it or not, every single time you talk to an insurance adjuster on the phone, they are recording that call. They will absolutely use everything that you say against you. People think it's just in a criminal case, but it's not. It applies in civil cases as well. It's called the admission by a party opponent, and anything that you say can and will be used against you, and they will definitely take it out of context. So when that really friendly insurance adjuster calls you and says, hey, it's Lisa from First State Insurance Company. What happened? Can you just talk to me and tell me about it? The person's in a state of shock. They're not ready to talk about it. And they don't really know what's going on. Lisa's sounds like she's their best friend. So a lot of times they do talk, and a lot of times they will say something that does not inure to their benefit. Even if that's not really what the case was, it will be twisted.
That's good advice. But there's going to be some sort of inevitable conversation that they will have to have with their insurance company, right? Because there's, maybe an obligation to report the accident.
Yes.
They have a vehicle that may be totaled or damaged. And so how do you navigate your advice with the conversation that has to happen about reporting the accident and talking about just getting into a new vehicle or renting a vehicle and just all the logistics that happens after an accident?
So I would say that it's okay to initially report the accident, but I would absolutely say don't go into details, don't talk about your injuries, just report the accident. But the best thing is to call your attorney and find out what your minimal contractual obligations are and to meet those.
So I know that something that a lot of people, research or look into, or they just try to figure out maybe once they have a claim and once they're going through the process is how much is their claim worth, right? And how isn't a claim evaluated? Because you drive on the side of you know, that, or you're driving on the highway and you're looking at the side and you see all these big billboards with these massive checks, and so, you know, is every case a 7-figure case, or like how is a case determined? How's the value determined from a case?
There's so many different factors that affect the value, Jordan, and one of them is what kind of insurance policy limits are available, because that's going to affect what you're actually able to recover. One of the things that is obvious is the degree and the severity of the injuries. Are there catastrophic injuries? Did this person lose a leg? I sure hope not. You know, is the person going to suffer for the rest of their lives? How high was their pain and suffering, and how long did it last? Are they left with a permanent impairment as a result of the accident? Did they seek medical treatment? How much medical treatment did they need already? And how much medical treatment are they going to need into the future? Some people that are in auto accidents end up needing care for the rest of their lives, and it's important that you have a good attorney that can advocate for you and make sure that they're claiming all of the damages that you're entitled to.
Yeah, so it's really not a one-size-fits-all answer is what I'm gathering.
No.
But when you think about a claim, when you think about a personal injury case, what's the benefit? Some people may try to do this by themselves, and then some people may elect to get an attorney. What type of value does an attorney like yourself bring to a personal injury case?
We bring the fire, I would say, because the insurance companies, they can't ignore us. They know that we can sue them. They know we will sue them to get them to pay and to honor their contractual obligation. Unfortunately, they do take advantage of you as the consumer, because they know that most consumers do not know the technicalities and the intricacies of insurance law. They know that the person doesn't know how to navigate an insurance contract. They're tens of pages long, these contracts, and a lot of times they're difficult, and they are created very specifically to maximize the benefit to the insurance company under the technicalities of the law. They know that. So we do get these calls all the time, like, hey, I was planning to handle my own claim. When did the accident happen? Oh, it happened about 9 months ago. Okay, so do you have any offers? Well, they offered me $2,000. Okay, well, were you hurt? Well, yeah, I've got a broken leg, and it's healing, but I'm still recovering. And from an evidentiary standpoint, wow, you've got your work cut out for you. At that point, there could be treatment delays, so many different things. But the point is that they're undervaluing the claim and taking advantage of that person's lack of knowledge to not pay them what they deserve. And you can count on that happening across the board every time. Or worse, they will outright deny a claim that they should pay, because they know that, well, if there's no one holding our feet to the fire, why should we pay it? Every single day that an insurance company delays making a payout, they're profiting on your money. And they're doing that because they take the money from the policy premiums and they put them into reserves and they invest them. They're earning interest on that. So every day they delay paying out, they're making a profit.
Wow, so much knowledge right here. Elle, thank you so much for coming on. We are out of time. If people do have more questions, want to reach out to you, how can they find you? How can they contact you for more information about anything that you went over today?
Yeah, absolutely. We're available. Give us a call here at Lulich Attorneys, 772-589-5500. You can ask for a consult with myself, and I would be happy to answer your questions. And I hope you don't find yourself in this situation, but if you do, we're here to help guide you through it.
All right. Well, thanks for listening. I'm Jordan Lulich. This is the Lulich Corner, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
See ya.